What is actually happening behind the scenes of the Iran and Israel conflict? While the world focuses on missiles and drones, Iran is moving silently. Covert operations have been launched, hundreds have been arrested, and dozens of others executed. Even more surprisingly, they are identified as a spy network linked to Mossad and the United States. Evidence is starting to emerge. Recordings of street communication equipment allegedly used for intelligence operations have been spotted. How did Iran claim to dismantle a major spy network? How is it the shadow war being played by all parties? And why could the situation push the world to the brink of a new clash? In this video, we will dismantle it all. It all started, viewers, on March 18, 2026. In the heat of the war, Iran announced the execution of Koroush Kevani, a figure accused of being a Mossad spy during the 12-day war in June 2025. Now, it's important to know Kevani was said to have supplied images and intelligence information regarding sensitive Iranian sites, crucial data for determining strike targets. Now, the timing of the execution was no coincidence. Make no mistake of this. This announcement coincided with the death of Iranian intelligence minister Ismail Khatib in an airstrike in Tehran. Iran's goal in executing Kevani in the midst of an active conflict was to create a much larger psychological effect, sending a strong signal to anyone thinking of cooperating with the enemy. And it turns out this war was just the beginning of a much broader operation. Before the execution took place, a massive sweep had been carried out silently. Iranian police chief Ahmad Razad Redan announced that security forces had arrested about 500 people suspected of being spies for Israel. This figure is not just a statistics, viewers. Make note of this. Of that number, about 250 people are said to hold important positions with strategic assets that allow them to provide sensitive information regarding domestic targets ranging from military facilities to vital infrastructure. Not only that, at least 50 others were arrested on charges of being mercenaries, that is, parties working with America and Israel to identify strategic locations, including the public services and infrastructure networks. Confessions from the agents began to pull back the veil on this operation. Now, one suspect admitted to recording locations targeted for attack to ensure accuracy, even an attack missed. He reportedly requested that the target be hit again, showing direct coordination on the ground. Another case was even more shocking. This female agent was arrested after recording the moment a bomb fell in a civilian area and then sending this video to a contact linked to Mossad. In this recording, she even expressed support for America and Israel. Just about 30 minutes after the video was sent, her location was successfully tracked by authorities. She was immediately secured, demonstrating how fast Iranian counterintelligence response is. On the other hand, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, through its intelligence unit, also announced that the arrest of 103 people suspected of being part of America-Israel network since the start of the war have been captured. One of the most serious cases involved a 4-person cell that was planning sabotage against Tehran's electricity grid, but this plan was successfully thwarted before it was executed. To prevent this network from expanding further, the Iranian government drastically tightened information control. Internet access was restricted, and some communications lines were cut. In a follow-up operation in early April, authorities seized 139 Starlink terminals and arrested 46 people suspected of being involved in the distribution. These tools were allegedly used for secret communication that are difficult to track. But it didn't stop there. The Iranian intelligence ministry also thwarted the smuggling of light and medium weapons suspected to be used by opposition-affiliated armed groups to carry out sabotage and security disturbances. All of this show one thing: this war is not only happening in the air or at sea, but also domestically, behind the scenes in the shadows. And if this is true, that a network of that size was successfully dismantled, one big question arises: how much has yet to be revealed? As the conflict escalates, war is no longer happening on the battlefield. It has moved into information spaces. The emerging narrative mentions the rise of a pseudo-patriot Iranian network, diaspora figures considered by voicing American interests, by framing support for pressure on even attack against Iran. One of the names most frequently highlighted is Mossad, who is said to have a wide reach and connections with the United States, specifically the US Agency for Global Media and the National Endowment for Democracy. Along with other figures like Nazan, Azhar, they form an ecosystem of media, academics, and activists actively influencing global opinion. But this war doesn't stop there. On social media and on the streets, changes to the Iranian flag icon briefly triggered controversy. The use of symbols considered unofficial was accused of being part of a propaganda, not just a technical error, but an effort to shape perception and weaken the legitimacy of the national identity. Iran did not stay silent. Their first target was Kash Patel, the FBI director. His private email was breached and a number of documents and personal images were leaked to the public. But this was just the beginning. As a result, more than 19,000 files were leaked, ranging from personal documentation and strategic maps to recording of secret meetings. One of the most striking was a recording of a secret visit to Jordan that had never been previously disclosed to the public. At this point, viewers, one thing becomes clear. This war is not just about bullets and missiles, but also information. And whoever controls the narrative can change the direction of the conflicts without firing a single bullet. The accumulation of mutual warfare, intelligence operations, and psychological warfare combined with the failure of peace negotiations in Islamabad became a turning point, pushing the conflict into a new phase. Instead of subsiding the tension, we have increased it. And now, the indications are increasingly clear. Preparations for a follow-up controversy between the United States and Israel against Iran. On the military side, the most obvious signal comes from the movement of the United States Air Force into the Middle East. Dozens of strategic transport aircraft such as C-17 Globemaster and C-130G Super Hercules were detected moving towards the region. They are not empty. They are carrying troops, defense systems, and a massive amount of combat logistics. In various previous escalations, such a surge in troops is almost always a signal that something bigger is being prepared. Even diplomatic pressure has begun to be abandoned and replaced with full combat readiness. On the other hand, Iran shows no signs of backing down. Defense systems are being strengthened, surveillance tightened, and film messages continues to be sent to opponents. Everyone is moving. Everyone is preparing. And at this point, one thing becomes increasingly clear. The region is no longer in a phase of limited conflict, but on the brink of a new clash that could turn into open war at any time. And now the world's attention is focused on one crucial point, the Strait of Hormuz. Viewers, tension in the world's most important energy route is entering a new phase. It involves not only Iran and the United States, but now China as a key player. In the ceasefire process, China is said to have been standing on Iran's side, and the results were immediately visible on ground. A Chinese tanker, Red Star, was reported to have successfully crossed the strait. Despite the blockade announced by Trump, the ship had turned back the day before, but then continued its journey. The signal is clear. The blockade is not fully effective, and China has a room to maneuver. Now, traffic in the strait is starting to be dominated by ships linked to China. This gives Beijing, to be honest, a strategic position, not just as an observer, viewers, but as an active player in the crisis. On the other hand, China has the ability to pressure Iran through control of satellite intelligence data. But on the other hand, if its interests are threatened, China could also become a source of support, even in the form of targeting information against United States Navy ships. This means the balance of power in Hormuz is now much more complex. The impact was immediately felt throughout the world. Energy prices surged even before the full effect of the blockade actually happened. Interestingly, Iran is predicted to be more capable of surviving thanks to domestic capacity and supply resilience, while the Gulf countries are starting to feel the greater pressure. And in the midst of all this, the Middle East is the most fragile between the uncertain diplomacy and increasingly real potential destruction. This to you have been brought to you by the Global Observer, and I'm your host, Awesome Labdi. See you in another one. This has been brought to you by Awesome Labdi, and you're watching the Global Observer. See you in another one.